The Ag Tribes Report is brought to you by Legacy Interviews, a video service that captures people as they really are, so the future knows who they really were. Here is Legacy Interviews guest Carol Hensley discussing the opportunity for a quiet person to speak their mind.
How was it for you, the experience?
Very comfortable. Tried to sit down every morning for a week or two and reflect on my life. And I'm recalling well over 70 years. I may not talk very much, but I think a lot. And I listen to other people. If they don't talk a lot, they're surely thinking. And if you ask them their opinion, they may share it with you. You've asked for my opinion. I don't mind sharing that. I think I probably talked more than I should have.
No, not at all.
Welcome to the Ag Tribes Report, a breakdown of the top stories affecting the culture of agriculture, with your host, Vance Crowe. The report begins in 3, 2, 1. Let's begin.
Welcome to the Ag Tribes Report. I'm your host, Vance Crowe. Each week, I bring on a co-host that represents one of the many ag tribes that make up U.S. and Canadian agriculture, so that way we can talk about how it's impacting the culture of agriculture. But this week, a little bit something different. I had a legacy interview that ran all the way up to the end of the day, and I decided I could not have a guest waiting on the side for me. So I decided that I would just do this as a solo episode. So here I am, just to chat with you about some of the news that's been going on this week. We're going to see how this plays out. I know that I don't have the on-the-ground farm perspective, but I did just spend all of last week in agriculture and all of this week. And I need to do a small change to my microphone. Okay. So last week, I was out with an animal ag company for the whole week. And this week, I was out at an animal ag conference. And then I was at the FCS financial board meeting. So I had a chance to be around agriculture all week. Then I had legacy interview clients in here that were from the central Nebraska. And so I have spent all week long with agriculture, hearing about things that are going on. And so I thought, rather than make a host or a guest wait for me, I didn't know if I'd be done it right at 4 or if I'd have to go longer. So I decided, hey, I'm just going to do the show solo and we'll just see how it goes. Some of the stories that I want to cover today: National Corn Growers put out an article, actually put out a couple of articles over the last couple of days about high production costs and low crop values and what that's doing. So I want to have a little bit of a discussion about that. We're also going to talk about the closure of a Crown Royal bottling plant in Canada and its potential impacts on U.S. grain, but more than anything on relationships between the U.S. and Canada, which, as far as I can tell, are getting pretty bad. Then we're going to talk about the EPA's controversial decision to delist Iowa rivers from impaired status despite high nitrate levels. And so we're going to kind of explore some of those stories. I'll throw in my 2 cents on them for whatever that's worth. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about Bitcoin. Since we're not going to compare it to land prices, we'll just have a little bit of a discussion about things that have been going on in Bitcoin land. And then I'm going to try and come up with a new Peter Thiel paradox. Everybody knows the one that I think about, ag land demonetizing land, but I'm going to try and put myself on the spot and share some other opinion that I don't think other people agree with me on. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a worthy adversary. And if I'm totally candid, I'm a little bit like a guest right now because I don't know who that worthy adversary is going to be, but I will come up with something by the time we get there. All right, before we jump into the stories, you guys probably remember last week, Ryan Sorrells, who is an Oklahoma custom harvester, who wanted a special header from Canada that would allow him to be able to harvest different kinds of beans without having to constantly change the header out. He had ordered it from Canada. It was supposed to come, and then on the day he was expecting it, so he could start harvest that week, the U.S. officials were like, whoa, we can't let this thing across the border until we know where the steel was mined from, smelted from, and who manufactured it, and for all of these component parts, not just like, oh, in general maybe 80% of the thing is made out of steel in this way, but we need to know it for all of it. So last week Ryan got on social media and he posted some videos about, hey, what's going on here? This can't happen. I'm going to try and get some social media attention. And he did. He got tens of thousands of people involved in it. This brought it to the attention of politicians, who then saw an opportunity to jump in and potentially help him. And by press time of last week, nothing had happened. Well, now by press time of this week, 1 week later, still nothing has happened. And in fact, what Ryan told me was that James Langford's office said that it is now up to the president himself if the head can come over the border without knowledge of all of this information about where the steel comes from. And so there's not a lot else to report here. I actually had a chance to talk with Ryan on the phone. You could tell he was frustrated, but he was like, I'm working on another header right now. I got to get the crops out of the fields. So, I got to go. But so there's not much to report except for like, this is terrible. This is exactly what we do not want in a government. We are a modern, sophisticated economy, and we cannot be in the position where one person, the president of the United States, has a magic wand that can swing some things through and some things not through. This is the very definition of what it means for decisions to be political, and it is catastrophic, right? We can't run an economy like this. And I know, like, the thing that I wanted most when I was looking at the panoply of things that were going on in the world in terms of this election, Ross Ulbricht being freed, the guy that had been arrested and had a whole bunch of his Bitcoin seized and accused of all these things. He had his life being thrown away in prison, I thought unjustly. And Trump had come to the Bitcoiners and said, I'll free him if you elect me. I'm willing to vote on that. I thought that was a man's life that could be freed. And there were a lot of other reasons. But at this point, I don't think I'm alone in being like, hey, what the fuck is going on? Why are we, turning our economy into this, like, Donald Trump controls everything and he gets to point at what works and what doesn't work? And having been around agriculture for the last 2 weeks, really in depth, I can tell you farmers that were pretty happy with him when he got elected are pretty unhappy now. And I hope that this gets straightened out, not just for Ryan, but really for our entire economy. But okay, let's move on now to the story. High corn production costs squeeze farmers amid low prices. On August 26th and 28th, the National Corn Growers Association reported that U.S. corn farmers are facing financial challenges as production costs remain near record highs while corn prices have plummeted. This isn't news to anybody except for maybe some of the details. So from 22 to 25, costs dropped just 3% from $9.28 to $8.97 per acre, but corn prices fell over 50% from $8 to under $4 a bushel, with projected 2025 yields of 188.8 bushels per acre. Who knows whether that's true or not? No, nobody knows. This could be complete nonsense. But what they're saying is the break-even point is $4.75, and the market price being at $3.90 means that that's an 85-cent per bushel loss. And so what they were breaking down were what is going on here. So they said that there's 135% rise in seed costs, 117% in chemicals, a 74% increase in fertilizer since 2007, and land and machinery up 102 and 143% respectively. So I think that this is all good information about how much those prices are up. But I think one thing that this covers up, that this actually doesn't show, is the inflation rate, right? If we say that, corn prices have fallen from $8 to under $4 a bushel, you have to think, like, when was the last time we were at $4 a bushel, and how much buying power did $4 have, 4 or 5 years ago? And it's significant, right? It is, even if you're using just the most basic inflation numbers where you're saying it's 3% per year, the amount of buying power you have with that corn is significantly less than what it was the last time it was at $4, let alone how much less it produces that it purchases from $8 corn. So, this is terrible, right? And part of it is inflation, but another big part of it is we're growing too much corn. It is obvious that whatever signals the market is supposed to be sending to our farmers that are deciding, hey, should I plant soybeans or corn? They're broken, because it is not that far from when you purchase the seed to when you plant it to when you harvest it that we can't keep a cycle up that lets you know, hey, this is what prices are going to be. We are planting way too much corn, and in large part, I think it's for several reasons why it's too much corn right now. Demand, while it's relatively high, it's still lower, right? We have a lower cattle herd than we've ever had before, but we also have a trade partner in China, which I know corn growers are the first ones to say, well, it's only 10% or less than 10% of our trade goes to China. But still, they have basically, totally cut that off. They are not buying grain from us. They're buying it from somewhere else. And so yet again, we are at the whims of political folly to make it so the price can be jerked around. And you can see these huge waves going through. And it's pretty clear when you're talking to farmers that if they had not received transfer payments last year, we would see a lot more farms going up for sale. And we don't right now. The farmers are having really low prices for their crops, and we're having all these troubles. Prices are going up, and yet we don't see a massive number of farms going for sale. Well, that's obviously because the government payments from even back in Biden's era, not just Trump, and then it keeps rolling from insurance payments of 2023 to then Trump coming in, and now the big beautiful bill. But how long is this going to go on for? And is it a good thing, right? We say all the time we want to see new, young, and beginning farmers in there, but at the same time we're making it so anytime there's a down year and things are not good, and there's always going to be up and down cycles in farming. That's just the way that it is. I don't know that the bubbles would always be this big, but we have these down years, and instead of letting some of the people that are not as efficient go out of business, we're sending them checks. And if you're getting checks that make it so you do not have to make production that is higher than your costs to get that production, what we're doing is we're saying, whatever you do, noble farmer, don't ever give up your land, because the government's going to send you payments. I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know how long Trump has with a Congress that's going to keep voting for everything that he wants. Judging from the people that I'm talking with, who just a few months ago were pretty big Trump supporters, I'm not so sure that they are. And I can tell you that other people that are hurting because the value of what their wages are buying them keeps going down. I can't imagine that they're going to think it's a great idea while they are buried in credit card debt to send landowners checks for more money. And so something's got to get fixed here. I mean, everybody knows that listens to this show. I'm a person that wants as little government intervention as possible. I understand, Machinery Pete, when he was on here, he talked all about how if we want to have food to eat in the United States, we can't let farmers go out of business. But I think we're way beyond that. I don't think that these payments that we're doing to our farmers is making it so we have food. In fact, I think when prices go up naturally, like they did during avian flu, the government will step in and undercut them by importing eggs from Turkey and South Korea. So I don't know. All this monkeying around with our economy is not good, and it's certainly not getting us any closer to the things that people say that they want, which is having young, new farmers in, new innovative strategies. Because the truth is, if you try an innovative strategy and it doesn't work, you're risking a lot. Whereas new and innovative strategies, they don't get the chance to try them out anywhere nearly as much as would be needed to make them be successful. I don't want to say they should be. Who knows what they should be? But I wish that this government intervention would get the hell out of our way of allowing our system to grow and be made better, instead of being one where we say, yeah, we didn't listen to any of the market signals, or we didn't get the right market signals, so we planted way more corn than we needed, and now we're suffering because corn prices are so low. So, all right. Headline number 2 this week is not such a pretty week, but Crown Royal bottler closes Ontario plant and shifts to the U.S. On August 26th. The Diageo, which is the company that owns Crown Royal bottling facility in Amherst, Ontario, announced the closure of its Amherst, Ontario factory set for February of 26, with operations shifting to the U.S. to streamline its North American supply chain. This plant, a key employer, processes corn-based Crown Royal whiskey, supporting Canadian grain farmers. The closure threatens local economies through Diageo maintains its Canadian distillation and aging facilities in Manitoba and Quebec. No employee impact numbers were disclosed. On X, Canadian ag voices worry about reduced demand for local corn, while U.S. farmers see potential for market grains. The move comes amid volatile Canadian and U.S. trade relations, with Prime Minister Mark Carney pushing European trade ties. Critics argue this prioritizes corporate efficiency over rural communities. So, this story is, it's really too bad for the Canadians. And I have to say, my Canadian friends that I'm in touch with, they have been saying, hey, it's really getting pretty bad, the relationship between the U.S. and the Canadians. And my response back is most of the people in the United States have no idea that regular Canadian farmers are pissed off at the United States. But, one of my buddies was telling me, like, you can really get a group of guys on the afternoon all riled up if you just bring up the Americans. And he was saying, we were talking about making a trip down to the U.S. and some of them are like, nah, I just don't want to go. I just don't want to mess with it. It's really too bad that our relationship with Canada is getting to this point. Now, I know a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, I put something out that said, that we shouldn't be at war with the Canadians. Like, we should have a better relationship. And there were some farmers that came out and said, well, we are at war with them. We do, their success means if they sell a bushel of corn, then that means we don't sell that bushel of corn. And that may be true. But I have to think, like, it is a great big world out there, and there are not very many people like us, Canadians and Americans. Western values, our approach to democracy, just our heritage, right? There aren't very many people like us in the world. Why would we choose the people that are, have been our allies to be our enemies? I think it is a really bad decision, and I would like to see this get straightened up. But frankly, I think Canada, the U.S.-Canadian relationship seems to be the least of Canada's worries right now. They seem to have a lot more problems. Inflation in Canada is going just totally nuts. I was talking with some people that were looking at how much Canada and the United States, for that matter, the government facilities are starting to say, hey, we want you to return to work. And part of that is a way to stimulate the economy. If you can get people to, go from just being in their homes, working from their home office, to needing to get in their cars, drive in their cars, go to an office, which they have to rent, and get lunch and daycare and all the things that go along with that. Well, you are in a way stimulating the economy. Frankly, it's pulling some amount of money out of the pockets of the people that are there. So a lot of government groups and even corporations are starting to say, hey, we want to see you come back to work. As I don't know, the corporations are using it to stimulate the economy, but the government is. And in places like Halifax, Nova Scotia, a friend of mine was telling me in 2019, it costs like, I think it was, I don't even want to go into the numbers, but it is more than doubled the cost of living there. And this is going to further exacerbate it. The question becomes, I wonder if people are being forced to go back to work in their offices. I wonder if some of these cities that blew up, that were fun cities, the Boulders, the Boise, Idahos, the places where there weren't necessarily jobs, but people loved being there because they could go outside and go hiking and go in the mountains. I have to wonder, are those cities going to have a sort of white collar Rust Belt effect when people realize, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to work my remote job anymore. Now I have to leave and go back to the city in order to get jobs, and have all of those cities that really expanded really fast now start collapsing on them. I don't know. In any case, from what I understand, in Canada, the inflation rate is bad. People had been doing a lot of work from home. having the distillery move there, it's just another hit on Canada. All right, story number 3. The EPA rescinds impaired listing for Iowa rivers amid a nitrate crisis. Okay, so many of you probably remember earlier this summer when I reported on the idea that you were not allowed to water your lawns in some of the cities in Iowa. And this is because they were getting so much rain, and that rain was, according to some groups, pulling so much nitrates off of the fields that it was overrunning their water facilities. And so the EPA came in and said, no, you've got to stop watering your lawns. We need to quit putting so much water in there. So what was interesting was a listener sent me this story. The EPA as Region 7 rescinded its listing of 7 Iowa river segments, including the Des Moines and Raccoon rivers, as impaired due to high nitrate levels, reversing a Biden-era decision. This move, announced August 12th, came despite nitrate spikes in June and July, with the Raccoon River levels hitting 20.55 milligrams per liter on June 8th, twice the safe drinking level limit. Des Moines Waterworks ran its nitrate removal facility for 112 days, lifting irrigation bans only on August 7th. Critics, including the Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, call the reversal dangerous, citing health risks like blue baby syndrome and cancer. The Iowa Farm Bureau supported the decision, arguing nitrates aren't toxic and surface water shouldn't face drinking water standards. On X, environmentalists decry the move as ignoring the science, while some farmers, welcome the reduced regulations. This debate highlights the tension between ag productivity and water quality. So, I mean, I got to start off by just saying, like, I have no idea what nitrate level is appropriate. I don't know. Is it 20.55? Is it 10.55? People do go look at this. I believe we should have drinking water standards. But as I looked into this story, and I really just got it right before press time, there is a disagreement about, hey, is the water level that is the nitrate level in an open water source like a river, is that indicative of where the water is going to be, the nitrate levels that you're going to have by the time it comes out of the tap? And there is some argument as to whether or not where they're testing it, how they're testing it, is unnaturally inflating the levels. But on the other hand, you don't want to have too much nitrates in the water. I remember when I ran this story, I went and looked at blue baby syndrome, and it really is a problem that the amount of nitrates in the water can make young children not be able to get enough oxygen, and it actually makes them turn blue. So this is terrible. And I don't know what the answer is. I think it's good that there's a public debate. I think it's likely there's probably some middle ground where this is maybe there is often way too much regulation. I can't imagine the people from Iowa Farm Bureau would be arguing in favor of something that would hurt people. But on the other hand, man, what a technique to get people really worried. I used to always say this, that if you really want to freak somebody out, here's what you can do. Take a glass of water, sit across from, friend, your spouse or something like that. Take a glass of water, scoot it over towards them, look at the glass of water, then look up at them and smile. Do you think they're going to drink that water? Hell no, they're not going to drink that water. Because if we have even the slightest inclination that there is something hidden in our water, as soon as that glass were to touch your lips, you'd start being like, does that taste different? Does that taste bad? Because we are hyper programmed to be worried about it. And so that's why when you start talking about these subjects, you really do need some sort of metric. You need to say, what is the right way to test the water? What are the levels that they should be at or shouldn't be at? And then use that science and don't allow it to become political. I have no idea if that's what's happened here, but I would say this is one of those times where the fact that we have politicized science so deeply has created a terrible situation where we really don't trust the science. And so now what do we do in these sorts of circumstances? Okay, that is going to do it for the news stories. I way prefer having somebody else here to talk about what their news stories are, and we got a couple guests coming up in the next couple of weeks that I think you're gonna like. Some shows. I can't quite confirm it, but it does appear that there is a cattleman from Oklahoma that's going to come on and have a debate with me about Bitcoin. And there was a guy named Blake Hurst who wrote an article that specifically called out my podcast for never having invited him on to the podcast. So Blake, if you're out there, know that you will get on my calendar and we'll have you come on here. But I got to say, anybody that pushes their way on using their elbows had better bring the heat. You better have a real Peter Thiel paradox and a worthy adversary, because I'm not going to let you talk shit about me in the news and then come on the podcast and give you a light walk. So I'll be looking forward to that one. All right. Let's talk about Bitcoin. So normally during the show, we would be doing the Bitcoin land price report right now, and we would be comparing how much does it cost for an acre of high quality farm ground versus Bitcoin. This week, Bitcoin is at $112,000, and that is down now about 8% from the all-time highs. But it's at $112,000. It's so funny how your definition of what is a high price gets stretched out, and $112,000 a year ago would have seemed insane, totally out of this world. But now, because we've crossed 120, when it goes down to 112, you're like, ooh, man, it's really down right now. One of the things that happened this weekend was I got a chance to talk to quite a few people about Bitcoin. My favorite question is, whenever I'm talking with people is, what do you think of Bitcoin? And I had some chance to talk to some people with some pretty deep financial backgrounds. And what I am so surprised about when I'm talking with people that supposedly have a sophisticated knowledge of finance is just how little they actually know about things like inflation, or about how, where the dollar is priced, or, even just how Bitcoin works, even in general. And I think like it is a really good measure for me when I'm talking with somebody of like, how much are you willing to bullshit me on this subject? So I was introduced to somebody the other day and they were like, oh, this guy, he knows a ton about Bitcoin. You're going to love it. He's like our Bitcoin guy around here. And so I asked him a question. I was like, oh, how into Bitcoin are you? Tell me about that. He's like, oh, I mine. I was like, oh, you mine? Okay. Tell me more about that. What kind of miner do you use? And that's when he's like, oh, well, I actually don't mine. It's my buddy that mines. Oh, okay. And but I'm really involved. I'm really involved. And then you're like, all right, well, tell me about your involvement in mining. Are you a part of a mining pool? And he's like, oh yeah, we're totally in a mining pool. I'm like, oh, which one? Oh, I don't remember. And then you're like, okay, well, what wallet do you use? And the guy was like, oh, well, I mostly keep mine on an exchange. And what was so interesting about this is, and I'm sure you have experienced this, like when you know a lot about something and somebody comes along and tries to bullshit you, you see through it immediately. You know instantly that they don't know what they're talking about. And there's very few things that I've had an expertise on that are like this. But what's interesting is after somebody has shattered the illusion about how much they know about this one subject, then everything else you hear them talk about, you're like, how do I know whether or not you know anything at all about this subject? There's this concept called the Gelman amnesia effect. And the Gelman amnesia effect is it's the describing of the idea. When you're reading a newspaper, I know people don't use newspapers anymore, but you're reading a newspaper and you read an article about a subject that you know a ton about, and you're like, this reporter knows nothing. This person is a total moron. They do not know what they're talking about. This is like, it's either they're an idiot or they're blatantly lying. Well, what happens is you turn the page on the newspaper and you have amnesia for how little they knew about a subject you knew a lot about. And then you're watching them talk about a subject that you don't know anything about, and you're like, oh, I guess that is true. Oh, that must be the way that, you know, this new World Screwworm works. And oh, this must be the way that, you know, cattle work or prices or any of those things. And so anyway, it's not much for me to share with you there, but that's one of those things that you know instantly when somebody doesn't know about it. And the antidote to that, the way that you can get yourself in a position where you don't have that problem, is not to be like, oh, I just don't talk about Bitcoin. It's to actually try it out. It is to say, I'm going to go to an exchange and I'm going to buy just a little bit of Bitcoin. And then I'm going to move that Bitcoin to a wallet. And what's going to happen is you first have to like do some research about getting to an exchange. Then you have to do some research to get a wallet. I can personally say that I often recommend people that are low tech, you know, they're not very good with tech, use a Trezor Model 3. And if you want to do the high security thing, you should get a cold card wallet. And once you've moved Bitcoin from an exchange to a wallet, now all of a sudden you are going to be able to distinguish between people that do know stuff about Bitcoin and people that don't, because you have knowledge about it. And it sounds scary, and it seems like one of those things like, oh, I don't know, how could I do that? I might mess it up, Do it with a small amount of money that if you lose it, you're like, all right, well, that's just the cost of me taking a class. You know, do it with $50. I think it is the best way. And then just keep marching along. Make sure that after you do that, you get a wallet. Now you've got to figure out, hey, how would I use this wallet to send some Bitcoin to my buddy? Okay, now how do I get a node set up? How do I do these things? Instead of doing the thing where you act like you know what you're talking about, or you just avoid talking about it. All right, I digress on that one. This is it was just my pet peeve and an interesting experience I had this week. Man, when you have an experience like that, doesn't it make you go like, God, I really hope I don't talk about things that I don't know about with other people. Right? Like, I really hope that I have not sounded that dumb. And I'm sure we all have, right? You run into somebody that knows a lot more than you. And even if they're being charitable, it starts to come out that you don't know. But wow, it's very easy to lose respect for somebody when they put themselves out there as knowing a lot about something and they don't. All right, moving on to the Peter Thiel paradox. And this is where I talk about what is one thing that you believe that almost no one you know agrees with you on. And I was really hoping that by the time I reached this point in the show that something would have just kind of dawned on me. But the truth of the matter is, I love doing this so much that I do end up putting out my ideas all the time. And I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to have ideas that people don't agree with you on, just as like because I want people to disagree with me, right? The point of this is to say, do you know enough about a subject to have an opinion that is not the same as other people's? And I think that this is an important, one way to think about how do you develop one of those ideas. I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is the explanation for why is it that we radically overestimate how much we know about a subject. And that may be what happened with that guy. Maybe he just had the Dunning-Kruger effect. But what happens is you read one or two books, you watch a documentary, you engage with just a little bit of information, and your confidence just keeps going up and up and up and up on how much you know about something, right? You read one psychology book, you watch one documentary, and you just keeps going up and up. But then eventually you hit a point that the more you read, instead of your confidence going up, now all of a sudden your confidence starts going down, right? It starts like, because the more that you read, the more that you're like, wait, how can that be true? Because I thought it worked in this very simple way. But then the more you learn, the more you're like, well, there's these caveats and there's these exceptions and there's these reasons why it doesn't always work that way. And so in the Dunning-Kruger effect, what ends up happening is you start falling down into the valley of despair, right? Where you're like, I don't know that I will ever be able to learn something and have it not make me feel less good, because the more that I learn, the less that I know. But what happens is, so you go all the way up and then you've come down. Eventually you do hit the bottom, right? And then you start coming up on the other side. And as you come up, you are humbled. You know, you figured out just how much you didn't know. And so this is when you are able to develop a real Peter Thiel's paradox. It's that you understand and know something enough where the idiosyncrasies of it, the things that don't quite fit in, you understand enough to be able to have a much larger picture. And from that larger picture, you can come up with an idea that other people don't agree with you on. And so if you're one of those people that's like, I wonder what I would say to my Peter Thiel paradox, think about a subject that you know a lot about and that you have enough information and enough knowledge for you to have a different opinion than what most everybody else thinks. I think that's the best way to come up with the Peter Thiel paradox. So I'm going to totally leave you hanging. I'm not going to have a deeply controversial opinion. It has been one heck of a day. The legacy interview I did today, Kyle, if you're listening, your parents were amazing interview. Very quiet, humble people, but a great interview. But I did not have any time at all to come up with a new Peter Thiel paradox. Okay, so we're going to finish out with the worthy adversary. And a lot of you have seen the back and forth on X between me and Jared McDaniel. Jared is a cattle rancher from no man's land, Oklahoma. He is way out there. He runs a family ranch that has been in the family for generations. He and his wife and their kids are on their own out there, right? They are building community, and they are independent people. And Jared has very, very independent thoughts on the price of grain and cattle prices and where all those things are moving. But one thing I've seen him do quite a bit is take shots at Bitcoin, quite a bit, you know, to the degree that I sit there and think like, hey man, like either you know something I don't, or somebody needs to have a conversation with you where they explain what's going on there, because, you know, he has strong feelings that it was invented by the CIA and that they can wipe it out and that it's magic internet money. And so not long ago, I said, hey, why don't you come on my podcast and why don't we have a conversation about it? And he agreed. He threw out some memes about I'm your Huckleberry this week after we had kind of not been able to find a date. And so we are going to do a podcast, and I will definitely let everybody know. I know Jared has just a boatload of kids, and he really cares about being at their events and being there for them. So we might have to figure out the right scheduling time. But while I respect Jared, I really I care for him. He's been a good friend to my family for many years. When he talks about Bitcoin in this way, I think he's doing a disservice to everyone that listens to him and respects him for the things he does know about, because I think he's leading people astray. And so I'm going to absolutely kick the shit out of his argument. And I actually know that this is not going to be an easy, what do you want to call it, a discussion or a debate, because one thing about Jared is he does not play by the rules, but I'm really looking forward to it. So that is going to do it for this week's show. I actually ran longer than I normally do. I hope you guys have enjoyed just having a quick chat here and talking about the news of the day. We'll figure out when we're going to do the episode with Jared McDaniel. Blake Hurst, I'm coming after you. I can't wait to see if you can bring the heat. One thing I have to say, one of the reasons I have been so busy is I have been delivering this class called Interest-Based Communications. And this has started kind of slow, but it is starting to grow. This class is where I teach a philosophy of professional communication. It starts off as a class about negotiations and how to do interest-based negotiations. Then it moves into introductions and storytellings. How do you talk about yourself when you're introducing yourself to a group of people so that they say, oh, that's what that guy does. Oh, that's a person I want to go talk to. Then I have a session on having deeper conversations. And these are conversations that can help you if you're a salesperson. You want to figure out, how do I build a better relationship? It could be that you want to build better friendships with the people that you work with or your own family members. So I have ways of asking questions and ways of responding to what you hear people say that can really help you have a way of thinking about how you interact with people. Then I do a session on conflict, how to resolve conflict. This is a class favorite. People really love this class because it takes conflict, and instead of making it about why two people aren't getting along, it helps them figure out, hey, where is there an opportunity for us to resolve this thing and have us come out better on the other side. People really like that one. And then I have a session on presenting and feedback. And so I give some ways to think about how you can present your ideas to other people so that it makes them engaged and interested in what you have to say. And then I do a whole part of this where I talk about feedback. And that's because often when I teach this class, I won't have the time and bandwidth to give everybody individual feedback about their presentations, but I can teach the group to give feedback so that way your people that are around you are like, hey, this is what you can do to get better. This is what I saw that I think you would want to improve. So anyway, all this to say, if you are somebody running an organization or a company, or you want yourself to engage with this class, I am really building it out. I've been delivering it to pharmaceutical companies, a biotech firm, a hedge fund. If you would like me to deliver it to your organization, I can do it over about a day and a half on site. We can figure out to do something online, or we do sessions right here in St. Louis. So if you're interested, send me an email, vance@legacyinterviews.com. There were a few of you that sent them to me a few weeks ago when we were talking about this. I'm going to follow up with that. We are going to do an online class. We're going to do some other in-person ones. I don't know exactly when we're doing them, but they are probably the best well-received work I've ever done. So I'm going to do more of this. All right, I'm going to finish out by playing a video about a talk that I give called The Man on the Box. And then I will be out of here, and I'll be back next week with either Jared McDaniel, where we'll toss around Bitcoin, or I'll have another guest on to do the Ag Tribes Report. I was in the Peace Corps teaching Kenyan villagers how to prevent malaria, when one day I was outcompeted by a snake oil salesman who stood on a box in the town square and told a better story. I was devastated and spent the next 10 years learning why people listen to him instead of me. In this talk, I share what I've found. I'll teach you how to tell your story, how to introduce yourself, how to talk about your organization and what you have to offer in ways that make people want to listen, so we will never again lose to the man on the box.